Welcome to this comprehensive exploration of the historical archives regarding human conflict. What occurs when profound religious conviction transforms into a multi-century geopolitical struggle across continents? Today we examine the Crusades, currently identified as the 80th most significant event in the entirety of global history. Join us as we meticulously reconstruct the shattered landscape of medieval faith and military ambition through empirical evidence. We begin our analysis with the socio-political climate of the 11th century and the theological motivations behind the first call to arms. In 1095, the Council of Clermont ignited a spiritual wildfire when Pope Urban II promised the remission of sins for all participants. The Byzantine Empire, reeling from the Seljuk victory at Manzikert in 1071, desperately requested military assistance from the Western Latin Church. This period was characterized by a rigid social hierarchy where land ownership determined political influence and religious authority remained absolute. Approximately 100,000 individuals, including 7,000 armored knights, prepared for the arduous journey toward the holy city of Jerusalem. The prevailing theological climate prioritized the liberation of sacred sites over secular diplomatic considerations. Economic factors, such as the desire for new territories and wealth, also played a significant role in motivating the European nobility. The cry of Deus Vult echoed through the cathedrals of France and the German territories. These initial movements set the stage for a conflict that would persist for nearly 2 centuries. Detailed records indicate that the majority of participants were motivated by a genuine sense of religious duty and penance. The strategic junction of 3 continents became the focus of intense military planning and spiritual fervor. Historical evidence suggests that the movement redirected internal European violence toward an external perceived adversary. Social context revealed a society deeply preoccupied with salvation and the apocalyptic significance of the Holy Land. Stage 1 concludes with the departure of the Prince's Crusade in 1096. The First Crusade achieved a series of improbable military successes through extreme hardship and tactical adaptation. Following the disastrous People's Crusade led by Peter the Hermit, the organized forces reached Constantinople in early 1097. The grueling 8-month siege of Antioch tested the endurance of the crusading armies before its fall in June 1098. On July 15, 1099, the Crusaders finally breached the northern walls of Jerusalem after a 5-week investment. This victory was followed by a documented massacre of thousands of Muslim and Jewish inhabitants within the city limits. Consequently, 4 Latin principalities were established, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the County of Edessa. These states served as strategic outposts for Western influence in the Levant for several decades. Military architecture evolved rapidly as massive stone fortresses were constructed to defend these new territories. The social fabric of the Levant underwent a profound transformation as Latin clergy and nobles integrated into the local landscape. Trade networks between the Italian city-states and the Crusader ports began to flourish, importing luxury goods westward. Statistics indicate that only a small fraction of the original participants survived to see the conquest of the Holy City. The establishment of these states required a constant influx of new pilgrims and warriors from Europe. Early success fostered a belief in divine favor among the Western participants. However, the surrounding regional powers began to consolidate their defenses against the new arrivals. The second stage illustrates the peak of early Crusader expansion and the solidification of their regional presence. Detailed maps from the era highlight the shifting boundaries of control between 1099 and 1144. Each tactical decision during this period had long-term implications for the stability of the region. The cultural exchange between the Latin West and the Islamic East accelerated through daily interaction. Stage 2 ends with the consolidation of power under the first Crusader monarchs. The fall of Edessa in 1144 shattered the perception of Crusader invincibility and prompted a new call for holy war. Pope Eugene III authorized the Second Crusade, which was notably led by 2 powerful European monarchs. King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad III of Germany spearheaded this massive military endeavor. However, the campaign was plagued by internal divisions and strategic blunders from its very inception. The German army suffered a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Dorylaeum, losing a significant portion of its strength. Meanwhile, the French forces endured brutal attacks while navigating the treacherous Cadmus Mountains in Asia Minor. A joint attempt to besiege the strategic city of Damascus in 1148 ended in complete failure after only 4 days. This humiliating retreat severely damaged the prestige of the crusading movement in the eyes of the European populace. Enthusiasm for future expeditions diminished as the heavy human and financial costs became increasingly apparent. The failure also highlighted the growing coordination among the regional powers under the leadership of Nur ad-Din. The social impact in Europe was characterized by a period of profound reflection and theological questioning. Many attributed the defeat to the perceived moral failures of the participants. Despite the failure, the movement continued to inspire a sense of collective identity among Western Christians. Stage 3 illustrates the transition from confident expansion to the realities of sustained regional conflict. Evidence suggests that the lack of a clear unified command was the primary factor in the Crusades' collapse. The regional landscape began to shift as the Seljuk and Zengid forces gained tactical confidence. Historical records detail the logistical challenges of maintaining a massive army so far from home. This period served as a harsh lesson in the complexities of medieval Levantine politics. The third stage concludes with the return of the monarchs to Europe in 1149. The rise of the Sultan Saladin transformed the geopolitical landscape of the 12th century through unified regional leadership. In 1187, the Crusader forces suffered a decisive defeat at the Battle of Hattin, leading to the fall of Jerusalem. This catastrophe prompted the launch of the Third Crusade, involving the most prominent rulers of the medieval West. Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire participated. Although Barbarossa perished en route, the remaining forces successfully captured the strategic port of Acre in 1191. Richard the Lionheart achieved further victories at the Battle of Arsuf, demonstrating superior tactical coordination. However, the goal of reclaiming Jerusalem remained elusive due to logistical constraints and political instability. A treaty signed in 1192 allowed Christian pilgrims unarmed access to the Holy City while leaving it under Muslim control. The mutual respect between Richard and Saladin became a legendary aspect of medieval historical narrative. This period saw the peak of chivalric ideals and military professionalism on both sides of the conflict. Statistics reveal that the financial burden of this crusade led to significant innovations in taxation and administration. The Third Crusade solidified the strategic importance of coastal fortresses over interior territorial control. Socially, the interaction between the two cultures during truces facilitated a limited exchange of ideas and technology. Richard's departure in 1192 marked the end of the most famous chapter in crusading history. The fourth stage emphasizes the clash of titans and the resulting diplomatic stalemate. Detailed accounts from both sides provide a balanced view of the military engagements and negotiations. The environmental conditions, including extreme heat and water scarcity, played a critical role in the outcome. Historical evidence points to the incredible resilience of the standing armies during these prolonged campaigns. Stage 4 concludes with the fragile peace that followed the Treaty of Jaffa. The Fourth Crusade remains one of the most controversial and paradoxical events in the history of human conflict. Originally intended to target Egypt, the expedition was diverted by Venetian commercial interests and Byzantine internal politics. In 1204, the crusading forces attacked and systematically looted the Christian city of Constantinople, their supposed ally. This act caused an irreparable rift between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches that persists today. The wealth and relics of the Byzantine capital were distributed across the cathedrals and palaces of Western Europe. A short-lived Latin empire was established in Constantinople, displacing the traditional imperial authority. This event significantly weakened the Byzantine Empire, making it vulnerable to future territorial incursions. The diversion highlighted the shift from purely religious motivations to secular political and economic goals. Historical analysis suggests that the Venetian Doge Enrico Dandolo played a pivotal role in orchestrating the diversion. The sack of the city involved the destruction of priceless ancient manuscripts and works of art. Statistics indicate that the sheer volume of treasure taken was unprecedented in medieval history. The social context of the crusade was marked by a complete breakdown of religious and military discipline. Stage 5 illustrates the fragmentation of the crusading ideal and the rise of mercantilist influence. Detailed records from the era describe the horror and confusion of the Byzantine inhabitants during the occupation. The legacy of 1204 remained a source of deep resentment within the Eastern Christian world for centuries. Evidence shows that the Fourth Crusade achieved none of its original religious objectives. This period represents the most significant turn in the narrative arc of the medieval Crusades. Stage 5 ends with the consolidation of Latin rule over the ruins of the Byzantine capital. The 13th century witnessed a series of diverse and often unconventional attempts to secure the Holy Land. The tragic Children's Crusade of 1212 saw thousands of youths embark on a journey driven by misplaced idealism. Meanwhile, the Fifth Crusade focused on Egypt, successfully capturing Damietta before suffering a total defeat near Cairo. In 1228, the excommunicated Emperor Frederick II launched a unique campaign based on diplomatic negotiation. Speaking fluent Arabic, Frederick secured a 10-year truce that temporarily returned Jerusalem to Christian administration. This achievement was notable because it was accomplished through dialogue rather than large-scale military engagement. However, his actions were condemned by the papacy, which favored a more traditional military approach. The social landscape of the Crusader states became increasingly complex as different factions competed for local influence. Many participants during this era were professional soldiers rather than inspired pilgrims. The logistical infrastructure supporting these expeditions had become highly sophisticated and commercially driven. Stage 6 highlights the shift toward pragmatism and the increasing influence of secular diplomacy. Detailed studies of Frederick's negotiations reveal a deep understanding of regional power dynamics. The environmental challenges of the Egyptian campaigns provided critical lessons in military logistics and timing. Evidence suggests that the initial fervor of the movement was being replaced by specialized military operations. Historical data from this period emphasizes the high cost and low return of sustained military pressure. The interplay between the different crusading fronts showed a lack of a single unified strategy. This period served as a precursor to the final decline of the Latin presence in the East. Stage 6 concludes with the end of the 10-year truce in 1239. The final decades of the crusading era were defined by the inexorable rise of the Mamluk Sultanate. King Louis IX of France led two major expeditions, but both ended in significant personal and military failure. His capture in Egypt during the Seventh Crusade required a massive ransom that strained the French royal treasury. In 1291, the Mamluk forces launched a massive assault on Acre, the last major Christian stronghold. The fall of Acre signaled the permanent conclusion of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem in the Levant. Statistics from the final siege reveal a desperate and heroic defense by the remaining military orders. The survivors were forced to retreat to Cyprus, ending a two-century presence on the mainland. Socially, the conclusion of the movement in the East led to a refocusing of religious zeal within Europe. The Mamluk victory established a new period of regional stability and cultural dominance in the Middle East. Stage 7 illustrates the decline and eventual collapse of the crusading infrastructure. Detailed archaeological evidence from Acre provides a vivid picture of the final hours of the Latin occupation. The human cost of these final campaigns was staggering for all parties involved in the conflict. Evidence points to the superior organizational and military strength of the unified Mamluk forces. This period represents the conclusion of the primary narrative arc of the medieval Crusades. Historical records highlight the profound sense of loss felt by the Western Latin world in 1291. The end of the movement necessitated a major reevaluation of Western foreign policy and religious mission. Stage 7 ends with the departure of the last Crusader ships from the Levantine coast. The Crusades gave birth to unique military monastic orders that functioned as the professional backbone of the movement. The Knights Templar, established in 1118, became legendary for their military prowess and their white surcoats. Beyond the battlefield, they developed the first international banking system, managing vast wealth across Europe and the East. Meanwhile, the Knights Hospitaller evolved from a nursing order into a formidable military force dedicated to protection. These warrior monks took vows of poverty and chastity while remaining at the forefront of medieval combat. Their massive stone fortresses, such as Crac des Chevaliers, remain as monuments to their architectural ingenuity. The orders were directly accountable to the papacy, often placing them outside the control of local monarchs. Statistics indicate that the Templars managed over 9,000 manors across Europe at the height of their power. The internal organization of these orders served as a model for future professional military structures. Stage 8 explores the dual nature of these institutions as both religious and military entities. Detailed accounts of their daily routines reveal a life governed by strict discipline and spiritual devotion. The interaction between the orders and the local populations was complex and multifaceted. Evidence suggests that their financial networks were essential for the continued viability of the Crusader states. Their legacy continues to fascinate historical scholars and the public imagination through various legends. This period highlights the institutionalization of the crusading ideal through dedicated professional organizations. Stage 8 ends with the dissolution of the primary military structures following the loss of the Holy Land. The long-term impact of the Crusades on global history remains profound and deeply influential. Although the military objectives were ultimately not sustained, the cultural and economic consequences were transformative. The demand for luxury goods like silk and spices stimulated the growth of powerful Italian city-states. This influx of wealth and knowledge helped spark the European Renaissance in the 14th and 15th centuries. Western scholars were introduced to advanced concepts in mathematics, medicine, and philosophy through Arabic texts. The feudal system was permanently weakened as nobles sold their lands to finance their holy expeditions. Statistics suggest a total death toll ranging between 2 million and 6 million individuals over 2 centuries. The religious and political authority of the papacy initially peaked before a slow decline in the later medieval period. Stage 9 provides a comprehensive overview of these structural shifts in human society. Detailed analysis shows that the movement helped create a more interconnected, albeit conflict-prone, global landscape. The interaction between the Latin, Byzantine, and Islamic worlds redefined the boundaries of cultural identity. Evidence points to the Crusades as a critical catalyst for the transition from the medieval to the early modern era. This concludes our 90-stage academic inquiry into the 80th most significant event in history. The enduring legacy of these conflicts continues to shape contemporary historical and political discourse. We have provided empirical data and vivid descriptions to illustrate the complexity of this 200-year era. This final stage summarizes the global transformation initiated by the medieval crusading movement. Stage 9 ends with a reflection on the shared heritage of the Mediterranean region. The echoes of these ancient conflicts continue to resonate within our modern perceptions of history and identity. Understanding this complex and multifaceted heritage remains essential for navigating the intricate landscape of global relations. We appreciate your scholarly attention to this significant chapter in the collective journey of our human species. 구독과 좋아요를 눌러주세요. 감사합니다.